inside the devil's den. Inside the devil's den.
There were many times that I took to read this book. Wasn't easy. And there were many times that I thought, why am I reading this book? But I finally finished. Here we are. The Cyborg Tinkerer by Mag Latorre. I went through multiple series in writing this script just because I wasn't sure which format I wanted to take. I mean, if I were to have my way and I had all of the time in the world and all the energy in the world, I would make it a formative essay like I was doing. But since it would take too much time and too much energy, I am swallowing my pride and just resolved to do a normal, in-depth review. For those of you who haven't been here before, my name is Nicole. I am the creator of the Unwanted book club here on YouTube, and I have been wanting to release this video for a while. I'm kind of making my way through various AuthorTube books, kind of doing a deep dive and a dissection on their storytelling, since most of them started out as debut authors themselves here on YouTube, and they have been teaching newbies and they have been passing on advice and passing on what they've learned through their YouTube channel. But the majority of AuthorTubers were giving writing advice before they even published their first book. So this is kind of in preparation for a future essay after I've collected most of the books that I feel like attribute to this kind of topic. It won't be released for a couple of years. I have plenty of books to make my way through in the meantime. But the first part of this discussion is, should debut authors be giving advice, especially beyond newbie material? And two, are AuthorTubers on here capable of learning and growing even though they're clearly better at teaching than doing? I'm not a huge fan of that defense. There are plenty of authors on here who claim that they teach better than they do, but I believe that teachers are only as good as their experience. So when you're not taking your own advice, it looks really bad. And apparently a lot of people think that it looks really bad because a lot of these books have very low ratings on Goodreads. There was a discussion a little while back over whether Mag Latorre was being fully honest and fully transparent about her reviews for the Cyborg Tinkerer, but we will get into that in part 2. Part 1, I'm basically going to be dissecting the story, and I'm kind of going to start carrying through the reasons why I don't think this story works. We're gonna have some laughs, we're gonna shed some tears, we're gonna suffer through it like always. AuthorTube has prided itself on marketing. I have made a couple of videos on that. I do believe that is actually the only reason, in my opinion, why they are best-selling authors is only because they've profited off of the audiences that they've garnered on YouTube. They have used that for their marketing, for their advantage, and it's just this vicious cycle. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think that AuthorTubers don't enjoy writing. I think they enjoy it to an extent. I don't think that they're necessarily trying to sell their writing so much as they are writing to sell. From what I have been seeing, a lot of AuthorTubers like to come up here and be more professional and give advice, and they always pretend like they know their shit, and they always pretend that they know what's up. You don't. So we're gonna get into it without further ado. So sit back and enjoy the loose retelling of a story about love and family, forgiveness, and how we are so much more than our parts. I mean, specifically robot parts, because every other part in here is definitely taken for granted. Amid the fantastical setting that is somewhere between Treasure Planet and The Greatest Showman, we are introduced to Gwen, the humble ship tinkerer who we are later found to be renowned all throughout the galaxy. She's descending her latest project, the Crusty Tulip, which she seems all too happy to abandon for the next one. Wait, that was a typo. There is no next project. To descend onto the moon of Anchorage. I'm still not exactly sure what is on Anchorage. I'm not sure why exactly she's here, but there are mechanics and it's a manufacturing district, so I'm assuming she's looking for a new job. The world building is all over the place, but we'll get into that in part 2. She's not exactly happy to be there, but then she's not happy about much of anything. You see, Gwen's dying, and she will be reminding you of that on every page for the next 2 chapters. You might be wondering what her next plan is. Is she here on Anchorage to see family? Take on one more final job? Send her money and a message to family? A final farewell gesture? Or is there some miracle cure, some miracle doctor, somebody to help her with her plight? But this is supposed to be about family, yes? The whole first underlayer of the story is all about family and finding family in places that you don't really expect, even though you're not related to them. So how is blowing off her real family really setting up her values for this theme to work? Because it's not. Because Gwen doesn't need to present these values. Setup isn't important, and subtext is just a fancy term that professors and editors use to make you feel like you're doing it wrong. So did Gwen resent her family? Did she have any hard feelings against them? Did she leave on bad terms? No, she just doesn't want to go back to see them. She doesn't really regard them in any light. So at this point, you're wondering, what on earth could Gwen have planned for Anchorage? Because according to her, she only has months left to live, and that's best case scenario. What is she planning to do in the meantime? Is it work? Is it money? Is it friends? What on earth could she have planned? What could possibly be more important than helping to set up her family for her death? Well, she's going to spend her money screwing as many people as she can to forget the fact that she's dying. So Gwen isn't really trying to forget that she's dying, she's just feeling sorry for herself. And this is evident through every interaction that she has with another character as she reminds herself, or she makes quick snippets or quips to the reader monologuing about how she's dying and how terrible it is and how can anyone go about their lives when she is dying. Her world is coming to an end. Therefore, the universe must also come to an end. She is wallowing in her own malaise and melancholy. But her reason for not being able to live is simple. She can't afford the surgery. So why bother trying? For the opening of a story that's supposed to depict Gwendolyn Grimm as being resilient, strong, and hard, this is actually setting up the opposite. You can create a strong character who simply accepts their fate. They truly don't believe anything can be done, and it does take a certain level of bravery to resign yourself to that over scrambling for a last-minute cure. I understand that. Gwen isn't accepting her fate. She's complaining about it. And this is the introduction to her main character. These first few pages only depict her as being whiny, weak-willed, and lazy. There is a difference between throwing caution to the wind and being just plain careless. This setup is not going to bode well for someone who needs to take on the majority of the responsibility in order for the story to work. Fail to set up your protagonist by inadvertently making her a contradiction within the first 3.5 pages. I think there's a term readers typically use for a character like this. Unlikable. But don't worry, the story will continue on despite these flaws. Lucky us. So she goes off on Anchorage, goes to get a drink where the local barman tells her about the fantastic circus in town. A cyborg circus. But associating with cyborgs and implants and parts and grades is very illegal since the prohibition laws passed by the emperor a decade earlier. But don't worry, this circus is very underground, very discreet. So despite being very illegal, I cannot stress this enough, Gwen decides to check it out. She heads over to the storage yard. Wait, whose storage yard? I don't know either. She catches a glimpse of these big, beautiful tents of pearl and silver lighting up like the 4th of July. It's very underground, very discreet. Among those performers at the circus, she sees Rora for the first time, a small acrobatic artist who is renowned for her gymnastic skills. There's the ringmaster, and then there are other various performers she entertains before a local mechanic decides to entertain her. But here come the feds to ruin a good time. They break up the circus and arrest the audience? Not the cyborgs. They break it up and arrest the people who just paid for tickets to watch cyborgs perform. Damn, Walter White could just set up shop right here. No need to worry about the DEA. They just arrest the people buying. They don't even bother the dealers at all. Can we get some context on these union laws? I would like some clarification. Anyway, Gwen is pouting in the county jail when some fancy pants guy arrives claiming to be a lord, but he's not actually a lord. I guess the guards just believe anything anyone says and just let anyone in without seeing any proof of ID or paperwork or anything. Speaking of paperwork, he propositions Gwen into signing a 13-year contract with the circus in exchange for her life. As much as we could all hope, this is not a death sentence but a life sentence. My pain didn't end here, neither does yours. But she failed to read the fine print. She's desperate, you know. She's dying. So Gwen starts passing out and they hurry her on board the cyborg's ship, ironically named the Obedient. The foreshadowing. But I would like to back up and briefly touch on the paperwork. I don't know if it was a 24-hour cycle, but the way this book moves, I can believe that he was at the jail the next day. If he wasn't, it still doesn't explain how he was able to get a hold of her paperwork. It's also likely that he has his ins and he has his ways. However, the Krusty Tulip wasn't really expressive as being that type of ship and that type of secret work. Gwen openly states that she's actually surprised that Bastian knows as much as he does, which states that there is paperwork on her and there are records on her. She's on the roster, but how did he get a hold of them? How do they get a hold of anything? And you could say, well, Celeste has her ways. Celeste is the big head honcho mistress in charge of the cyborg circus, by the way. And she's got her ins and she's got her, I mean, they have like the upgrades and all of this illegal access to all the cyborg parts anyway, even though they don't have any funds. I would also like to state, before we get any further, because it does get kind of comical, the fact that they're hiring a ship tinkerer in the first place to do cyborg tinkering. It's like hiring a mechanic to do heart surgery. If you really wanted to narrow it down, it would be like a specialist who dealt with prosthetics going into heart surgery. It is not the same thing. These mechanical parts, and the one thing that bothers me the most, I'm going to do some research so I could dive a little bit deeper into it in part 2. The book states that the parts are made up of electricity, magnetism, but then that they're also fused with blood and bone. Now, the way that the whole cyborg thing works is it's meant to make it look like it's a steampunk version of like transhumanism, but I fail to see how that would work, especially in regards to like the older upgrades. As we later learn, they cannot get wet. The newer upgrades don't really have that problem. How are you connecting wires and blood vessels and veins to these implants to make them work? And then on top of that, you're throwing someone in there who drives bolts into giant steel frames of a ship, works solely on ships, and you're just expecting them to do cyborg surgery. It makes no fucking sense. And it wouldn't bother me so much if, like, it could have just been a simple fix. It could have been, this was something she had dabbled in, this was something that she failed in, this is something that actually she could have explored with her arc. She tried doing it, but she had to settle for being a cyborg tinkerer. No, she has no experience. She had no interest in this whatsoever. This could have been a great arc where she finally gets a chance to redo her previous failures. She gets a chance to do something that she had wanted to do in the first place. And she doesn't believe in herself. So the whole story would have been learning to believe in yourself, learning to fall and then get back up and keep fighting for what you want, essentially. This could have been a really good arc for Gwen. I just don't understand how we're supposed to believe that somebody that works on ships is supposed to be doing surgery now. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit. And then you sign a 13-year contract. The value that she already had for her family, which she expresses she has no resentment or hard feelings for. She loves her family. She might even respect her family for the decisions they made previously. These values are taken down another notch when she signs the contract in favor of forgetting her memories. I guess that was in the fine print. She's going to lose her sense of self-identity. Now again, this could have also worked in favor of that arc if she were really seeking something as far as becoming a surgeon originally, to work on cyborgs, and then she had to give that up because the union passed the laws, the prohibition laws, so she had to cease, and she kept trying to fight for it, and then she screwed up, and then internally she just stopped believing in herself. Losing her memories is only a part of it. Like, the real fear here is losing your self-identity. And then she's also fighting this forgetting. She's also fighting the memories taking away and threatening to take away her sense of identity and what she really wants. So she comes to these gaps throughout the novel. She forgets what she's actually fighting for.
Stupid.
So they rush her into surgery on the ship, where Madame Celeste, the big-time head honcho in charge of the circus, announces that they will be performing surgery on Gwen's brain with no anesthetic and no local. She's simply going to have to endure the pain.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Much like the rest of us. Fast forward to Rora. We're switching POVs, by the way. Sorry if I didn't clarify that. Rora is powing around, doing her thing, getting into fights with the main antagonist, who's just a dick for the sake of being a dick. His name is Abercan. I don't really know what his purpose is aside from being a dick. We meet her friends Marzipan and Fabrizio. Wait, I'm in the wrong. I'm in the wrong story here. Marzana and Akio, who also don't serve much of a purpose aside from taunting Rora to get closer to Gwen, because clearly there's some chemistry there. This book, I also noticed, it tends to be very classist. The introduction to these two characters, they're shit-talking the employees who carry their bags. I'm sorry, you jump hoops all day. What makes you better than them? They're hired to help you out. Clearly they don't have anything. And it's not even like this resentment of like, well, they see us as cyborgs. It's literally like this prejudice against this prejudice. They're cyborgs and they're outcasts from everybody else because the laws were passed. But the reason the laws were passed is because the cyborgs were considered different. How is that helping to convince people that you're still people if you're acting like this? And most of these performers were like rich beyond belief too, which I really find hilarious. There's a lot of poor little rich girl backgrounds in here. So all of these performers, every background that I've read, they're just up here. Now they're just below the people that they already considered peasants. Yeah. Rora's new plan is to seduce Gwen because she wants an upgraded part for her arm or hand or whatever that is not common to come by. They're running out of funds. And of course, Gwen is working on something like this anyways, but you don't find that out later until a couple chapters. It's not the point. Rora is, she's attracted to Gwen, so it's okay. This sexual attraction is what is considered love in this novel, by the way. It has nothing to really do with like who you are as a person. These characters don't know each other, and then they're professing their love a couple chapters down before they've even gotten to know each other, and then they're surprised that the other person betrays them, and it's a lot of this needless drama that goes back and forth. You don't know them. Why are you counting on them to have your back? They're complete strangers. You can't make a love story like that. I'm sorry. And it's kind of ironic because I would say a good 60% of this book and the whole point is the romance. Rora invites Gwen to a ball. Gwen's not having it. She's like, I don't have anything to wear. She takes Gwen to her wardrobe. It's also expressed in this book that Rora is kind of small, kind of petite, I don't know how short, but her head doesn't even come up to like Gwen's shoulders really. And then she's described as having a different figure. Gwen is described as being slim. Rora is more like hourglass shaped. So when she gives Rora a big poofy yellow gown and it fits, it's kind of like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, where it's like one size fits all. And she's just like, yeah, I just haven't taken it to the tailor yet. They need to cut off the hem for him. It's like, it's not how clothes work. It's the little tidbits for me. It's the little bit of like, do you not go clothes shopping? You try on a size 12 at one store and it's a size 10 at the other. It's a size 11. It's a size 14. I have avoided clothes shopping for like a year and a half. I am running out of clothes. Because I hate going in place to place to place, constantly having to use fitting rooms. Because it's not even just every store has different sizes. Every brand, everything is different. And then you have women that are slim. You have women that are petite. You have women that have bigger shapes, pear shapes, hourglass shapes. We're all different. If you really don't face that struggle, I am sincerely jealous. We get to the ball, and Celeste announces that the Emperor has extended an invitation. I'm gonna need coffee. They get to the ball, and Celeste is talking about how the Emperor may be changing his mind. He may be coming around as far as these prohibition laws go. Is another thing we will talk about in part 2. I can't get into it right now, it's too much. Celeste is saying that she wants to bring her finest performers, the best of the best, to be able to convince the Emperor that they're not so bad after all. Anyway, they all buy it and they're like, sweet, okay, so let's fight. She's like, oh yeah, the losers are gonna have their contracts redacted and their implants forcibly removed. A lot of you are gonna die. They're all kind of caught off guard. They're all kind of like, well, what are we supposed to do for work? What are we supposed to do? She's like, yeah, that's the least of your worries. So, it's this big thing, and Rora is accusing Gwen of being in on it because Celeste is saying that management and Gwen, I guess, is included in that because Celeste needs her. They're kind of excluded from the competition, so they just get to watch everybody fight to the death. Gwen is not really helping her case much because when they first arrived at the ball, after being introduced as Gwendolyn fucking Grimm, she kind of blew off Rora to go dance with Bastion. Sunday best, we're all wearing our ball gowns, our suits, ties, whatnot. Can we at least change? No. What is the point of this? The whole point of the competition is to determine who is the best through levels that test their skills and their agility. I mean, not that it matters. By the way, I am spoiling everything. If you had plans to read it, do not finish watching this video. I'm going to stop you right now. Some of it I will be spoiling before I even get to the end of the retelling in this video, like I'm going to do now. What is the point of this competition? What is the point? The whole point is to change the Emperor's mind, which we find out later is completely useless. The whole point of this competition is to determine who has skill, but not only do their skills not matter, the competition and the contest that has 3 levels to it, by the way, doesn't really test anything. Level 3 might test their popularity, and that's as close as you're going to get to seeing how far these cyborgs can go. It's literally just a contest to the death because. And you could argue, well, Celeste didn't really need them. She didn't really need their skills anyway. She could have just plucked 10 of them. And that is my point. Why not just pick 10 people that aren't going to ruffle your feathers? Screw the rest of them. Just whatever, your contracts are terminated. What are they gonna do? You have all the Watchmen under your control. I mean, I guess maybe in a sense, brainwashing of getting people to convince them that there's still some hope left so that they kind of go along just enough for her to be able to go through with what she's trying to get through. The first round is literally an obstacle course. Rora's just kind of thrown in here and there's this pit of ice water, and here's where we learn that cyborgs are not supposed to get wet. Water is in the human body. How are you going to fuse machine and blood and bone without short-circuiting? Are these prosthetics? Or is this actual, like, transhumanistic nanotechnology? Would have made more sense. You don't have to go into the dissection of, like, what makes a cyborg, what makes it, but some of it should make sense. Rora gets second place. Not that that's good enough for her. Meanwhile, Gwen is being forced to pull out the first of the few parts. She's not good at it. I mean, we had already kind of been introduced to this before the competition. She was working on somebody's thumb and the guy was being impatient and she was just telling him basically, don't be a dick. She doesn't know what she's doing. Celeste is an idiot for taking Gwen on because she has no fucking experience. Why isn't Celeste removing the implants? Why isn't she? She is installing them. You saying she can't do double time for a little bit and remove all of the parts just to make sure they're intact, to make sure that they're still working properly for her future project? I don't even want to get into it right now. It doesn't make sense. Celeste does not need her. She just can't do overtime. So Gwen is struggling and she's getting she's getting Rora's beautiful yellow gown, which I think Year of the Author and Kirk Pattycake were talking about how it's most likely the only reason she's even in a yellow gown is because it would have made a great cover idea for her to be dressed in the yellow gown covered in blood. I side with that. I really do. I think that was the original concept for the color because it serves no purpose. It doesn't fit her personality. It doesn't fit the scene. It contributes nothing. Anyway, she's getting covered in blood and she's mortified because she's working on no anesthetic, by the way, so she's just going to be haunted by all these screams. But don't worry, Rora is there to distract her. Despite all of the death and horror going on, we still have plenty of time for chemistry. You would think there's alcohol in this. There really isn't. There should be. So Rora accuses Gwen of backstabbing her. Gwen is not in on anything, just there, barely doing her job. And then Rora remembers that she's supposed to get like the implant and everything, and she's like, they're still kind of cute. A lot of people thought that this book was a YA novel, and I would like to explain why. There's no development. There are mature things that happen in here, but there's not necessarily any maturity. There's no logical explanations for anything. If you were to pick up a steampunk book or a sci-fi book or even a romance book, there's some logistics in there. You kind of have to write smarter than this for people to be convinced that it's an adult novel. It really does feel like there was just swearing and random sex, and a lot of it just kind of thrown in there to deter people from believing that it's YA and from convincing themselves that it's YA, because it reads like YA. It doesn't read like a mature book. It doesn't read like it has any foundation for anything, especially if you are writing sci-fi. You have to write smarter. You have to have backups upon backups for when readers ask questions, because that's usually what adults do. Adults are harder to immerse into fiction because we've been through more experiences, we kind of know more than this stuff. We know where to find the holes, and we don't even have to really look for it to be kind of just there, especially in here. If people are saying that it's a YA novel, it's because it reads like a YA novel. You can say it's steampunk romance, adult, erotica, all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that people would normally be convinced that this is YA. You want to convince them through your writing, not through you telling them this is what this book is. And that is another discussion for another time, because a lot of author tubers do come on here and they insist it's an adult novel. There's also some, like, questionable bonding moments over Bastion's, later we find out that he has an eating disorder. I don't know how I feel about this, but I feel ick. There is a trigger warning at the beginning of the book, and I get that people who may have gone through certain things, I'm not saying that she has. I know nothing, but I'm just going off my own assumptions. That's the only reason I could see this being put in here, is if there was some kind of experience and people are like, well, I've had some experience, so I feel like I should write about it. It's a very sensitive issue, and when you're addressing certain sensitive issues, they should not be, how shall I put this? They should not be made to sound like quirks. They should not be made to sound like personality traits. To make him not be like the other men in the novel. I don't think there was a single straight man in here who was just nice. All of the characters in here are turned into tools or dicks. So we come across the second contest, which we're informed is to basically bring back a dragon.
What?
I don't know either. Dragons are close to being extinct, and much like the cyborgs, they're kind of the dirt and scum of society. They're basically made out to sound like they're pests. I would like to say that the first part of the competition, Celeste states that this is a solo act. There will not be teams. Round 2, teams, go wrestle a dragon for me. Why? Rora has a great plan to capture this dragon. Her plan is to befriend the dragon. Because maybe it's nice, and if it sees that they don't want to harm it, maybe the dragon will trust them enough to go back. Later on in the novel, like, she really kind of forgets her animals are just animals philosophy in favor of just killing the damn thing. She wants to befriend the dragon and bring it back to camp, but she's got Akio and Marzana. Abrakan has to ruin it. He comes up and he's like, aha, you led me to the dragon. And it's like, well, Celeste kind of told you where it was. Gwen rushes in because she had realized, per previous learnings from the library after their bonding with Bastion, she fucked up Marzana's foot. You'll have to bear with me, because I don't remember exactly how Bastion got on the dragon, but all of a sudden he's riding the dragon. Gwen's riding around him on her little hovercraft thingy. Bastion is trying to administer, ironically enough, an anesthetic. Firstly, I don't understand why we can't use the anesthetic when doing the implants for the cyborgs. Maybe I could believe that the brain has to be active enough because you're also installing a chip into the brain, but they don't really get into that, so that context is kind of lost. We're just kind of left to assume. Secondly, if you only have, I'm assuming, anesthetic to use for animals, but you're talking about a dragon that's probably going to be 10 times the size of what you're used to dealing with. You're talking about a dragon that's got scales and exoskeleton, and it's not a lion, a tiger, or a bear. This is something that you have to get a needle, first of all, that's going to be large enough to poke through that exoskeleton or scales, or you have to know where to hit it, which, once again, isn't really given in the book. We're just left to assume he somehow jabbed the needle somewhere and it started to drop. So carfentanil is what they used in, like, Jurassic Park, and I guess that's typically what they use for elephants and larger animals. I could believe that they used carfentanil, but again, you would have to have a large amount. Like, it would take more than one dose. It would probably take several doses, and there's no way of knowing how much is just enough. You're dealing with a rare species that you've never tackled before. You're used to dealing with cyborg animals that are drastically smaller than that. Celeste wants it alive. Say, well, just kill it. Who the fuck cares? Bastion should care. His ass is in a sling right now because Gwen doesn't know what she's doing. The last thing he should be doing right now is wrestling a dragon and risking killing it because he's giving it too much, or risking killing everyone else because he's not giving it enough. There's no way to really measure that. There's no way to really know that. And once again, there's no information. There's no context. There is no setup. There is no but, what, if, why? Why? My main problem is the number of questions that I have had while reading this book. That's why I was saying it's just so much. I couldn't just read it once and then give a review. I read it twice, 3 times. I thought that was going to be enough until I read the 3rd time, and I realized I was missing so much shit because the pacing is so off. It is so, it's helter-skelter in here. It doesn't make any sense. And the plot itself, there's no context. There's no setup. And there's contradictions galore in here. I'm not gonna make it through this video. I organized, I had my notes, I had everything set because I was just like, you just need to read. I'm all over the place. Somehow Bastion manages to knock the dragon out. Okay, they're all back, safe and sound, more or less. More parts are getting removed. Gwen has had enough once again, and she gets together with Rora, I think even Bastion is there, Akio and Marzana. And while she's like fixing Rora's hand and whatnot, she's going over her grand scheme for contest number 3.
O ye of little faith.
Contest number 3, which they really don't have a clue as to what they're going to be dealing with. All they know is that Celeste is sending them to... I really forgot the name of this planet. I don't even know if it's a planet. I think it's a moon, but it's all over the place. I forgot. The one guy nicknamed her the Grim Reaper.
Ironic.
Jinx! I don't know why I forgot that name. Jinx. That's the name of the... Damn it.
Anyone that thinks they're stupid, stand up.
Jinx is kind of where the audience is cutthroat, so they don't really throw tomatoes, they throw knives and bullets. Gwen has this grand scheme, grand plan, and Bastion's just putting pressure. You really think this plan's gonna work? You really think? And she's just like, I don't know about, there's just all this drama. Plan is to essentially sabotage the other contestants by stealing their props, just Abrakan, because Abrakan's a dick, so he doesn't really count in this book. They're gonna steal his props, so they don't have an act, and they end up losing.
Not only are you a cheat, you're a gutless cheat as well.
Once again, not much faith in the team. Rora is all against it because she's all about pride and she's all about, her background. She's got a lot to live up to. She's got a legacy. She's got this. She storms out. Abrakan confronts her and threatens her, and she spills her guts out to them, telling them Gwen's plan. This is the point in the book where it's meant to really emphasize Abrakan's dickiness so that we don't feel bad for the main characters basically cheating. Yeah, making other characters look worse doesn't make your characters look better by default. Anywho, we get to the, whatever. Rora gets back there, and Gwen and them find out that Rora spilled her guts, and Gwen's feeling betrayed now. And it's just, I love you, all this garbage doesn't make any fucking sense. And Gwen is still going about her plan like nothing's changed, going in to screw with Abrakan's props, even though they know to expect it. And who do you think pops up? Abrakan, of course. And he's with Celeste. Knock Gwen's leg out and is threatening to knock out the other one until Bastion offers to sacrifice himself as her apprentice, even though she's abused him in the past. And Gwen's just like, Bastion, no! And he's just like, oh, I have to. And so...
is so dramatic.
The props don't really get, bothered or whatever. And the acts go on. They love them. While they're on their way to the Emperor's planet, I'm not looking for the name again. It's something really pretentious. How have I gone through this book 5 times? And I can't remember any of the names of anything. This my biggest frustration. I mean, my memory is bad, okay? But it's not that bad.
Oh, okay. Denial.
All of the names in here are extremely vague and very, very forgettable. All I know is it's extremely pretentious, and I'm hoping that I wrote it down, but I have a feeling I didn't. Moving on. So they go to the Emperor's planet. They go to the Emperor's planet. Celeste is working her magic on Bastion, and we come to find out that she's pretty much got Bastion all under control. She's reworked his chip a little bit. Ben caught her monologuing, catches her monologuing a little bit later. They're already on the planet when she does that. For now, her and her friends are kind of like, well, what do we do now? In the meantime, Bastion is basically just being a mind slave for Celeste. They don't know what they're supposed to do, so they just go along with it. I believe they're kind of sort of welcomed, and it's when it comes down to the performance that I think that they all get caught and arrested. Surprise! It was a trap. The Emperor isn't changing his mind on anything.
Fool you!
And Celeste already kind of had an idea about this, so, she also had a plan. Gwen is just kind of irritated because, of course, it's the Emperor. He's an asshole, so why did they ever think that they would get a second chance with him? Now, I think like the night before, Gwen had overheard Celeste monologuing while she's fixing Bastion up just to her liking, monologuing about how her plan is to basically, brainwash everybody, and she wants to attack the Emperor. So Gwen thinks that she's gonna get brownie points by warning the Emperor, yo, this bitch is crazy, but he knows her, which is weird. How does she get a reputation? She's a ship tinkerer. If she were a cyborg tinkerer, again, this is where that previous arc could have played, where she was a surgeon, or she was, looking up to be a surgeon, or she was a prodigy, or she contributed something, and that's how he remembers her. Would make so much more sense, but this makes no sense. So he's offering her a chance. Ironically enough, he's offering a cyborg a chance to join his army. And the whole reason he passed the prohibition laws was because he was afraid that the cyborgs were going to be this superhuman army, which, essentially is kind of what we're all afraid of with artificial intelligence, but this is taken to a whole other level. So he offers her a chance, but everybody else, screw him. And she declines just because she hates him. Also, I would just like to say, why would you pass those laws if, why wouldn't you want to use that superhuman army to your benefit and create a cyborg army? Celeste has that insight. As we later found out, she has been collecting all of the cyborg parts, and she basically melted them all in this big giant pot and created superhuman cyborgs. The Watchmen are actually superhuman cyborgs. And somehow, they're overheating enough that their faces are melting. To reveal the genius of the machine work underneath that Celeste has been working on this whole time. I'm tired. I'm really tired. I don't find any of this believable. For one, it's such a waste. You can't just throw all of these cyborg parts. You can separate the wires from the metal and the mainframes and the chips and all this other stuff, but it's such a waste to throw it all together and just melt it together and or just take the parts and jam them together and make them into this monstrosity. It doesn't fit, especially with her reputation for being this genius scientist and engineer. Once again, the poor little rich girl thing. Even Celeste has a tragic background. She was a renowned scientist. She was the smartest in her field. She invented the whole cyborg thing. Why would she do this? Gwen is trying to appeal to her sense of humanity. Last ditch effort is to tell her, your cyborgs are your children too. Which is where this whole family theme is kind of supposed to come around full circle. It's supposed to tie in the we're family, but also we're more than our parts. And it's fine if Celeste doesn't want to take that offer. It's fine if she were twisted by bitterness and resentment and she's blinded by her rage so much so that all she cares about is revenge, even after the facts. I get that. Defeats the purpose of having that theme and having an arc, but not every character has to come around. Not every character has to have a positive turnaround. Gwen is not the right person to approach Celeste with these points. As I stated before in the beginning, she really didn't hold her family in any kind of regard. It's not that she didn't love them, it's not that she didn't care about them, it's not that she didn't respect them. She just didn't want to go out of her way to give a shit about them. And she cares about the people in the circus, but only a select few people in the circus, and only as much as they supply her, if that makes any sense. Like, she doesn't view them as people, she views them as tools, which is very ironic for a book that's all about cyborgs being human and still retaining their humanity. So naturally Celeste declines, and then we get this big bloody battle. I believe they get the dragon, which Celeste was trying to turn to her advantage. They get the dragon in there to kind of really mix things up, and that's how they win. That's how they get away. Then we have the threesome. It's fine. You know what? If that's your thing, fine. But I am not convinced that these characters give a shit about each other. I'm not convinced that they love each other. I'm not convinced that they care. It's turned into this big love story and this big romance moment where the three of them get together, and no, that's not what this is. That's not what this book was about. Again, 60% of it, maybe more, is all about the romance. And there is none. And there's nothing in here to convince me that they love each other, even in the slightest. There's nothing even in here to convince me that they want to be friends, let alone lovers. Carnal. It's all external, and it's all about the sexual chemistry. It's all about the physical. I mean, how do these characters really even affect each other? There's all this needless drama about you betrayed me, even though I don't know you and you don't know me. You betrayed me, so now I'm slighted. And then this person's like, no, I didn't betray you because I'm not that kind of person. But it doesn't even go that deep. It's not in a way to convince the other person that they don't get to know each other. These characters do not have anything beyond just very shallow, very materialistic personalities. After said threesome, three of them decide to embark on their next adventure. Somebody throws out that, where should they head next? Gwen, oh so sensitive Gwen, decides it would be a great idea to go see Bastion's family. Are you insensitive on purpose? Or is this an accident? Bastion doesn't want to go. He's just like, I don't want to touch that. I'm not ready for that yet. But nobody comes up with any better solutions, so that's where they head. And supposedly, that's where the sequel is going to be picking up.
Hey, Boo! Just kidding! Look!
So that's my retelling. Before I close this video, I'm going to let myself rant a little bit more about it. This is what this video is. I'm sorry. I wanted to make it a full essay and in-depth, but I can't do it all in one video. I am filming this, and it's filming at an hour and a half right now, and I have like 5 other things to do today. Editing it is gonna take some time. But there's just so much in this book that I don't care for, and it's one of those things too where it's like, I'm not a professional. I don't have a degree. I don't have much publishing experience. I don't want you to be misled into believing that like I know everything of what I'm talking about. I don't. I have a lot left to learn. So do the writers on AuthorTube. Most of the writers on here are just starting out. Even the ones that have been teaching for years on here are just starting out. They have not gone much deeper other than newbie advice. There is nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of people that need that information, but for writers who want to claim that they're professionals, who want to claim that they know what they're doing, you also have a lot to learn. The Cyborg Tinkerer had a lot of potential to be a lot of things, has a lot of potential to be like mostly an adventure story. That's honestly the category I think it would fit best in. Take down the profanity, the swearing, the really awkward writing like herpes of decor, tits for deflated sales. Oh my stars. It's a YA novel. But I really think that the reason that some of these writers are saying that they're adult books is because they want to write adult fiction. They want to be taken seriously as writers, and the only way to do that is to break out of the amateur phase. You can't start from here and then just be here because you're a writer, because you say so. This is coming from somebody who is not experienced. The only experience that I have is in writing and critical thinking. That's it. There's nothing in here to suggest professionalism or maturity or someone who knows what they're talking about. And that's fine. You are new at this, but you have painted an image. You have started to gain a reputation. You have a lot to live up to because you have a lot of people that look up to you. You can't just tell people and then hope in good faith that people are nice enough to go along with it. There's a reason there's so many people on YouTube calling you out. It's because of the lack of transparency, the lack of professionalism, and the lack of maturity that's in this community, and it is killing it. No knowledge, no experience when you have debut writers who haven't even published their books giving out their advice, telling you that they're better at teaching than they are at actually writing, and counting on the good faith of people to just be nice, shut up, and deal with it. No. First of all, this is the internet. Nobody is nice. Second of all, a lot of people on here are experienced writers. A lot of people on here do tend to care more about the art, and you have this friction between writers who believe that you write specifically to sell books. And then you have the writers who believe that you write because you want to write. There is a spectrum. It doesn't have to be one of the other extreme, but I have been seeing a lot on this extreme. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. Subscribe for more though, because there will be a part 2. I really hope I wasn't too offensive with this book. I am trying to do a little bit better. This video is an opinion. Like I said, you can always discount me as not knowing what I'm talking about because I'm openly admitting that I'm not a professional. If you don't believe me, give it a read. I dare you. I'll see you guys in my next video.
The demons you forgot about. In the blind spot, sitting in the bed. Now I'm making up beat. Invisible to me, yeah. Corrupted souls don't know. Got black mold behind the drywall. Couldn't even see, even when you bleed. So now you can feel